Octopath Traveler final impressions after 100 hours. Here we go. Wormys Playhouse, and today I'm going to be talking about my final impressions of Octopath Traveler for the Nintendo Switch. This game, what can I say about this game? This is definitely a callback to the 16-bit RPGs back from the good old days of yesteryear on the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis. It definitely has a lot of inspiration from those good old RPGs. If you enjoy those games of that turn-based combat and that 16-bit style, art style, and has a certain type of music that's going on, it really captures the essence of those old school games. So how great is this game? How many hours did I put into it? Was the story worth it? Was the combat worth it? And were the characters engaging enough to make this game worth being an RPG callback to bring forward to a new generation of video games? And I have to say, absolutely hands down, it is definitely a great callback game, a great RPG. I absolutely love this game. You know, it definitely stands alone by itself. Majority of great RPGs tell a really engaging story, and all the way through, the story is constantly progressing and just evolving into a whole new complex of a story. But this game kind of takes it onto a different direction. It tells a story of 8 different characters, 8 different adventures, and I think that's where the charm is for this game. So not only is it a really great callback to RPGs of the 16-bit era, but it also stands the test of time to stand up on its own 2 legs, or 16 legs because there's 8 characters with 2 legs each. So there are 8 different characters in this game. They're all playable characters, and each one of them have 4 different chapters. So there's a lot of chapters going on. There's a lot of story to go through. But each character, well, they basically go on their own journey. They have their own story to tell. So it's not one entire overlapping story that's going on that brings everything together. It's more little sub-stories that are going on for each of the 8 characters, and they each proceed through the 4 chapters. So that was really nice, because it was really nice to be able to pick up the game from time to time and just, you know, play a chapter here and there, and then be able to set it down, and then come back into the story, and you never really find yourself getting lost, because again, they're each divided up into chapters. So, you know, you can complete a chapter, you know, put the game down, and then come back. So I started off as Haunted. You know, she really gravitated towards me. I mean, she has a snow leopard. How cool is that? And she's a huntress for her job class, so she had a lot of neat combat abilities. She's, you know, she fights a lot with her weapons, but she has a lot of different abilities. She has a nice array of weapons, she has a lot of different maneuvers and abilities, and she has her companion friend, the leopard, that can also attack, so you're not short on weapons right there, which is really nice to be able to break certain enemies, because the enemies, well, they have certain weaknesses. You'll be able to break them, causing them to be in kind of a stun state, where you'll be able to unleash a lot of damage onto them, so that's a huge plus right there. The combat in this game never got boring. You know, it goes all the way back to that turn-based style of combat, but it had a nice little twist. It had that boost point system, so the more boost points you get, which will allow you to hit multiple times or build up the boost points so you can unleash a lot of damage. And again, the enemies, well, they had that weakness, so as long as you broke their weakness, you could just unleash such an enormous amount of damage on them. That's how you gotta play the game. You want to be able to just quickly break them and then just save those boost points and just unleash an ultimate attack on them. It was a great callback to the turn-based games, and it never really got too level grindy. Yes, it is a retro style game, so you do have to do some level grinding, but for me, that's where I found the fun in this game. I absolutely just loved the level grinding. I think I spent a little bit too much time level grinding, because I would just find myself in between chapters, let me go out and explore, let me go find some of these dungeons, because there are some optional caves and dungeons that you can explore which will have higher enemies in it, and you can just go through there and level grind so you can just level up. And it was just so enjoyable. I never got tired of that. I think that was one of the most enticing points in this game. It was really great combat, totally fit my style. But if you do find that the level grinding just gets too much because the enemy encounters are random, you're just traveling across the overworld and the enemies will just pop up on screen, forcing you into a battle. Well, there is a skill called the evasive maneuvers, where if you equip that skill, the enemy encounters, well, they happen at a much lower rate. You can almost travel across an entire dungeon with only going through one battle at a time. So that's good for the people that don't want to sit there and level grind, and they just want to be able to proceed through the game and get to the boss so they can get to the next chapter. But don't forget to grind up, because that is important. Although even more important than the levels, it's the armor and your weapons. That's a key element in this game, because I found that there were a couple bosses that were just annihilating me because they would hit with like a high element attack and I would just die instantly. I'm like, what is going on? And then I realized that, well, my armor is just weak to elemental attacks. So I equipped myself with high elemental armor on all my characters, and then boom, I found that I could just proceed through the dungeons and beat that boss much easier than just relying on my level alone. So it does come down to the statistics of the game and what kind of armor that you are wearing. Which that brings us to another point with the job classes. Each one of the characters has their own unique job class where they have their own unique array of weapons and elemental attacks, and they are all extremely useful. Each one of them has certain advantages over certain enemies' weaknesses. So in turn, the game will kind of force you to play as all 8 characters. I did gravitate toward my main party. There were 4 main characters that I did play through the most of the game, but it was kind of interesting because at the beginning of the game, I played with Hana. She was my main, and then I moved to Therion and Tressa, then Cyrus. But then as I proceeded through the game, well, I realized that, well, I gotta play as these other characters, because in order to play through a certain character's chapter, well, you have to have that character in your party. So you're going to want to keep them around, you're going to want to level them up, you're going to want to get them new armor and new weapons for them to proceed through the chapters with. So there were certain points of the game, certain points of the chapters where I needed to bring these other characters into my main team. So definitely keep them all around. You will be playing as all 8 of them. They're all very useful, but even more so with their job classes. Well, there are optional job classes that you can go out and seek. So each one of your characters, well, they can have a second job class, which that right there is huge, because then you can equip your character with 2 job classes. You can have a hunter and a cleric in one character, so you never really feel left out. If there's one character you're not using but you like their job class, well, you can equip that to your current party's classes. So the game finds tons of unique ways to play through this game. I would say that each person's playthrough of this game is entirely unique to their own, because you're going to proceed through the game differently. You're going to use your own party characters. You're going to explore different areas of the world map. There's tons of side quests for you to go on. So there's a lot of different ways to play through this game, which is, I very much like that, because my playthrough style of this is going to be different from yours. You're going to have a different experience than I will, and that's a really nice charm in this game, Octopath Traveler. And each one of the character stories I really much enjoyed. They all had their own story to tell, their own adventure. You know, it wasn't one grand scheme of a story that just kept getting deeper and deeper as you go. Yes, each one of the characters, well, they did have a deep emotional story to tell. But again, this game stands alone on itself because it tells a different, unique way of telling that story. Something that I haven't seen in any other RPG before. This hasn't really truly been done the way that this game tells it. And they're not all such a heroic adventure to tell. You know, Alberic, he's your warrior, so yes, he's gonna go on this heroic adventure, you know, saving the kingdom. But there are other characters like Tressa, but she's a merchant, and she had this merchant story to tell, where she wants to go on a story of exploration and just setting out and seeing what the world has to store for us. So they each tell their own unique story. So as long as you're playing through all the chapter 1s at first, and then through the chapter 2s, all your characters, well, they will level up naturally. So after I completed all the chapter 3s, I seeked out for the advanced jobs. Now these are the job classes that well, they're like the ultimate job for your characters. And they are entirely useful, they are entirely worth it, but those boss fights, those are some of the most challenging boss fights in the game. You have to really be an expert at your combat and your abilities. You have to know when to boost your boost points, when to boost your critical attacks, and when to go on the defense and the offense, because they will wipe you out in one clean hit if you're not prepared. But I definitely recommend it. I would actually argue that it is an essential part of the game, an essential part of the story, because they are so useful to your combat abilities. And they just make the game so fun. They really bring the game together, it really completes it. Those optional bosses, well, they are just so enticing, so definitely seek them out. You know, beat all the chapter 3s, go for the advanced jobs, and then go for the chapter 4s, and then you'll see how it all comes together, because there are little hints that the game does drop throughout each one of the chapters of each one of the characters. There is something that is bringing it all together, and that's where we get to the end game content. After you beat the game, after you beat all chapter 4s, once you actually beat through your main characters chapters 4, well, you can actually take them out of the party and put somebody else in, so you can have your main character be an entirely new character once you complete your character's chapter 4. But after the game, for the end game content, there are additional side quests that you can proceed through, and I definitely recommend them in order to proceed to the end boss. Because those additional side quests, well, they allow you to get ultimate weapons, ultimate abilities, and they're entirely useful. Actually, they are mandatory just to proceed through that end dungeon. So to unlock the end game dungeon, well, you have to complete a series of side quests, and then that will open this end game dungeon, and you have to proceed through 8 final boss fights. And those boss fights are quite difficult, but as long as you have the ultimate weapons and all your advanced jobs, you should proceed through it fairly easily, or normally, I would say. And then that is where you get to the final boss of the game. There is a little bit of story elements going on. It does kind of bring all the stories together in a subtle way. It's not actually mandatory. I wouldn't say that it's gonna complete the game's story for you. It just gives you a little bit of an extra. If you're looking to be 100% completionist for this game, this is where it all comes together. I wouldn't say this is mandatory, because this is very difficult. It's completely difficult to proceed through. This is one of those bosses where, you know, the old RPGs where there'll be a secret boss that's just so difficult to beat, near impossible. Well, this is that boss. So I wouldn't actually say that it's mandatory. You don't necessarily need to beat this boss. It doesn't completely fully bring everyone's stories together. It's just nice. It's nice having some end game content, some extra 100% completionist run for you to complete through. You know, I went through it, I beat all 8 bosses, and then I got to the final boss, and I got pretty far through it. I got to the second phase, but that's when my B team came into play, and well, my B team, they were a little under leveled. My main team was way up there in the level 70s, but my B team was all the way down in the 50s. And it still is possible, but you have to be at maximum rate. You have to be entirely lucky at some points. You just have to be on your game, on point. So I did put over 100 hours into this game, 103 hours to be exact. All my characters, well, they were up to level 70. Level 75 was my main character's final level that I've reached. Again, I've spent a lot of time level grinding, well, because I enjoy that. That's just what I enjoy. I come from that era of Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, even before that, on the regular NES, the Sega Master System, where you literally had to level grind in order to proceed through these RPGs. But again, it's not entirely necessary. That's just the way that my playstyle went, so you might have a different experience with the game. So does the Octopath Traveler do a good job recalling the games of yesteryear's RPGs? Absolutely, hands down, it does. I would definitely say this is a must if you have a Nintendo Switch, if you enjoy 16-bit style RPGs and turn-based style of combat. Definitely play through Octopath Traveler, and it was an amazing experience to go on this journey through. I absolutely recommend Octopath Traveler to you. So thank you for joining us today for another episode of Wormys Playhouse, and please like, comment, and subscribe, and follow me on Twitter, and we'll see you again for another episode. We'll see you then. Bye!